Hey everyone, it's Mark here and welcome back to Digi Profits. And in this video, we're going to have a look at what's been happening with Bitcoin. We've had a little bit of a bounce action overnight, but I want to have a look at where that's looking likely to be heading. We're going to have a look at what happened with Joule, where it kind of it didn't bounce with Bitcoin, and we'll look at why it didn't bounce up with Bitcoin when it has previously tracked pretty well with it. We're going to have a look at a couple of other things to do with the future of this particular market cycle that might be useful to you guys, and then we're going to have a look also at what's coming up on DeFi Kingdoms for those of you that happen to be in that project. So without further ado, we'll get underway. So what we've had is yesterday I was saying that I was thinking that we're unlikely to just go straight down because of the fact that, I mean, people were saying that this was a bear flag, and it's not really a bear flag if you have a higher high and then a lower high. It doesn't work. Bear flags are like you have higher highs and higher lows generally in a bear flag, while before you end up with that bigger dump where people get caught out and liquidated on the way down, thinking that perhaps we're going to go up. So longs get liquidated and you end up with a bear flag shape. However, it's not playing out like that. It doesn't mean that we couldn't go to the downside. We have had low volume around here. We've had enough volume to push through to here, but at this Fibonacci level, around the mid 30,000 range, like 30,500 range, we've been getting rejected off that. Look, we've tried to poke through it here, and here, got rejected off it, went down a couple of fib levels, bounced back up, got rejected off it here, and then once again here. So 3 or 4 times in the last 16 or so hours been rejected off it. That's not to say that we're not going to push through if the S&P 500 takes off in the morning, US time, then I would imagine that would cause, if that takes off and has a bounce, which it's at a resistance level right now, it could bounce, then you could see us break through this fib line and end up here closer to 32,000. Somewhere just under 32,000 would be where I would be expecting, and it would take, again, a further rise in the S&P 500 beyond that in the coming days to break through and have that bigger like liquidation effect that gets us through to a higher fib level of around 34,500. So that would be quite a major expectation. I think more so I'm looking at how it opens tomorrow is probably what's going to set up what's going to happen. So if the stock market opens up and it goes and has a bounce, we'll probably get up to 3,100 and a half. And maybe test the $32,000 range. If not, we could, and it opens low, we could find ourselves retesting this level here that we've tested here, and here, and possibly even dropping down another fib level to 28,000. I would still think a bear trap is on at that point. We could possibly bounce from there. But there's always at some stage that likelihood that we will retest this. In fact, we went lower than 27,000 because we did wick down on a different time frame down to below 25,000 on a different candle range. This is the 4-hour range, and we did wick down there on some exchanges, and it's possible we'll end up down there at some point. I'm just not so sure it'll be in the near term without some sort of event happening to cause that. Okay, so that's sort of short term. Right now we're in a macro environment that's not very friendly to any asset, in particular crypto, because they seem to magnify the effects of assets. Like when house prices are going up, crypto's soaring. When house prices are going down, crypto's going not so good. Same with the stock market and so forth. The first thing I want to look at, though, is why is it that every time we hit the $30,000 range, Joule was just about pegged to Bitcoin, with the liquidity pools and everything. We have a lot of strong hands in the Joule community now that it's had a lot of dumps. It is certainly, a lot more of the longer term people are in there. Why did it then do all of that, and then suddenly, and it went down with that there, but then suddenly we have the rise up here. Why didn't it rise straight back up to here like it did in this case, where it went from there to there, we went from here to here? Why didn't it do it? Well, I would argue that we started off sort of like bouncing up, and then there was a couple of big sell-offs, in particular more so from one whale in particular that kind of stopped that momentum of that uptrend from carrying on, and that's their prerogative. Like it's and I'll just show you the difference, by the way. The difference is we had been pegging quite well to Bitcoin, and then suddenly there's been a bleed against it, and that can happen with any altcoin because the liquidity pool pairings and so forth cause arbitrage traders to keep, while there's low volume, you will find that it will track pretty closely to Bitcoin. However, all it takes is one reasonably big whale holder holding a lot of a particular coin or crypto for that suddenly to bleed a little bit against Bitcoin. So it'll track against it, suddenly someone sells, and then bang, someone big sells, I should say, and then that happens. And what we saw was on-chain over 500,000 Joule got 500,000 US dollars worth of Joule got sold off. On-chain metrics showed that it wasn't just sold to buy Harmony 1, then that was sent to an exchange from there, and some of it was sold also on a separate set of taxations into USDT. So somebody decided to exit that market at that point, but they've sold out of their Joule. They do have a little bit of locked Joule, but they've sold of all of their actual Joule. So that's what happened there, and then since then things have been tracking against BTC again in the last few hours. So so that's what's happened over there. Now, one thing to keep in mind throughout this bearish phase of the market, looking at the RSI, the monthly RSI, that's Relative Strength Index for Bitcoin. Every time we've approached this, I drew this purple box here on my graph here. Every time we have gone into this zone for a period of time, whether in this case it was just about 3 months, in this case about 6 months, every time we have gone into this purple zone, usually the bottom is found, and then you're into your next major upward movement. Okay, usually the bottom's found. There was a time here where we didn't get into the purple zone, it went down and then bang. Okay, so we're talking about like COVID, I think that was around COVID that it dipped down, when arguably it would have carried on across and up without that black swan event. So here, this is where we are right now. I would argue though that it is possible that this is the time we go lower than this point in the RSI. The reason why it's possible is that this is the first time that the Fed's interest rates have been put up by 50 basis points during the time that Bitcoin has existed. So things could be different. So don't expect that this is necessarily saying that this is the bottom the moment it goes in there, but it is giving you a big clue. It may reach the bottom part of the box or show us a slightly lower point, hard to say, or it may prove to be just like that there. It does show though that sometime over the next few months it is likely to be the bottom of this market, because the interest rates won't rise forever. There's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, remember, a lot of you guys will remember the big housing crisis in 2008 when things just fell off a cliff. And what's going to happen when interest rates rise? Well, people will have trouble paying off their houses and their mortgages, and then you could end up with a big housing crisis issue again, and the Fed doesn't want that. The Fed also doesn't want their debt to go up by too much, and it does obviously become difficult to pay off debt when you've got negative GDP, like you're in a recession, which is what we're going to be entering into. So that's 2 quarters of negative GDP. So that means that they're losing money. The country is losing money. The gross domestic profit is no longer in profit for 2 consistent quarters in a row. Possibly it will end up being another quarter after that. So they don't want interest rates to be high for too long if that's what it's causing. And the other factor in the whole thing is that they don't also want everything to crash to the point that unemployment suddenly becomes a problem. Like if the stock market completely crashed and a whole lot of companies went under, like it got that bad, that's, you know, like a more of a generational problem, and then like a massive crash, and then unemployment becomes a big issue. Then that's another thing that they don't really want if they can possibly at all help that from getting out of hand. At the moment, it's pretty good, the employment levels. So the other reason I showed you this particular graph is because we've got a moment where you notice Bitcoin's on its way up throughout its history, and then it reaches a bit of a double top. But if you look closely, this double top, the bottom here, just wicked below the bottom there, and we're likely to retest it. That would be similar to over here. I know this played out over a longer period of time, but we had, you know, around the dot-com bubble, and then we had the housing subprime mortgage crisis, and that time, like, things went lower than the previous low, but it was still roughly a double top because it was only lower by a little bit. And then we're all the way up from there. So there is this theory going around that perhaps this is a double top, and if that plays out, then we will end up, though, it won't be a double top in the traditional sense where you end up down and it's all bearish. It's more on the way up, it's a double top correction, right? As the whole market is correcting. That could see us go to around 19 to 20K and then end up creeping our way up from there like the stock market. That's just one bullish scenario or thesis on how things could play out based on stuff in history. But it's not to say that it will play out that way. That is just certainly one way, and that's why we never go all in on any crypto asset, in particular altcoins. That's not to say that I'm not dollar cost averaging my way into DeFi Kingdoms, but I am unlikely to do a massive buy-in or anything like that unless this macro picture gets better. We see the Fed say, look, we're only going up 25 basis points, so it's lower than expected, or maybe even zero. Or we see the consumer price index, we see it drop from, say, 8.3 down to a 7. At least that's going to tell me, all right, perhaps we're at the bottom of the macro, and that could be a really good signal, you know, and I'd be looking at other factors too. So, you know, just be careful in that regard. And saying that, bear markets are the times that make people the richest, people that manage to accumulate even without striking the bottom. Even if you get within 50% of the bottom or even double of the bottom, people have made a lot of money in a bull market in crypto because they were around during the bearish times. Okay, so we've had some updates from the team saying that they're going to release updates every other week, so every second week, basically. We've got blue and grey eggs hatching, and that's going to be for pets. We've got more training quests coming by the sounds of it, or maybe that's just the training quests that have already happened. We've got DFK Duel, so there'll be some sort of player versus player action going on, or at least, you know, the first version of it. That'll be interesting to see. And then we've got the Stone Carver. I think that's where we can carve equipment and so forth on DeFi Kingdoms. And then in Q3, we've got land tournaments. We've got more achievement rewards. We've got up to level 10 fishing and foraging quests, level 10 mining and gardening quests. I'm looking forward to those. Travel, I think that means to different realms or maybe to different lands. And then yellow, gold, and green pet eggs hatching. I've got a number of green eggs, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And these things, they're not sure if they'll be released in Q3 or after, but Training Quest 2, some non-crafted equipment, stuff that's just equipment you can just go buy, but crafting equipment, an exchange. I'd like to know more details on that, but that might allow you to put have an order book and so forth, and put limit orders in and stuff like that. Player versus player, PvE, buildings, and guilds, so people can go into battle together and stuff like that. This is all going to be quite a lot coming, and you know, this is very, very early days in this project, so it'll be fascinating to see where we're at in the years to come. So without further ado, I will close off this particular video. I hope that you've enjoyed this update. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Please comment If you've got any questions or suggestions, I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, everybody.